Welcome to the Community Forum here at Columbia State this evening, a forum to discuss the upcoming referendum on the Metro Charter. My name is Brad Wright with SOCM, Statewide Organizing for Community Empowerment. We're hosting or sponsoring the forum here. Just want to thank Columbia State for letting us have it in this venue. And as I've told a couple other people, that it's conditioned on it being nonpartisan, at least from from our perspective, and from the panelists can speak for themselves. Just a couple words, and then I'll turn it over to Joe White from WPLN, our moderator for the evening. About SOCM. SOCM is a member-run organization with chapters and offices in East Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, and West Tennessee. We are a nonprofit that uses community organizing and collective action to address issues of social, economic, and environmental justice. And so this forum is really about just informing the citizens of Maury County about the referendum on the Metro Charter, of course, held on March 6th, and I know many of you, it looks like, from what a couple of you were telling me, have voted already in early voting, of course. But March 6th is the day, if you have not. And this is about also asking questions of some of the local public officials about the implications of a metro system of government. So we just want to simply encourage you to get engaged in the political process at the local level and state and federal level, of course, too, and to take things in your own hands as the people of Maury County. Know what the issues are and not be like sort of passive objects that have things done to them, but be engaged citizens who create the kind of future that you want to see for your community. So please sign in for us if you haven't done that, if you mind us having your information, and tell us if you need any follow-up on anything. There are copies of the charter out in the hall on the tables. Also, the last 30 minutes or so of the forum, Michael Chester, our chapter chairperson, will bring up some questions that the audience has submitted. So if you have questions that you would like to put to the panelists, we'll have about 30 minutes or so to put a couple of those to them in the last part of the evening. Michael Chester is in the back there with the box of questions. Joe White is our moderator this evening. Joe is the state capitol correspondent for WPLN Nashville Public Radio, 90.3 FM here. Joe's covered the state legislature and state government since 1984, so we feel like we have just the right guy to lead a good discussion for us this evening. Thanks.
I suppose since I'm going to be asking the questions and I'm not from around here, I should probably let you in just a little bit on some of my background about local government. I have covered the Metro Nashville government. I was a City Hall reporter for the old Nashville Banner for 3 or 4 years in the 1970s when that organization was about 10 to 14 years old. So I got to see some of the growing pains. I've also covered non-consolidated governments in Putnam County and in Wilson County, and about a half dozen to a dozen little cities in the northern Palm Beach County, cities that are far richer than anything we have here in Tennessee, and interesting to cover. But I've covered both those types of governments and have no strong preference one way or the other. I think that our panel tonight is here to answer questions that have arisen. Many of them are just simply practical questions. How will this work? How will that work? Let's see, our panel if y'all will wave, we've got Mr. Jim Bailey, the Murray County Mayor, Ms. Kim Willis, a commissioner for the Murray County Commission, Mr. Trent Ogilvie, who is the treasurer of the Charter Commission, and Mr. Randy Hardison, the vice chair of the Charter Commission. I think I need to point out that the two people in the middle are really in the middle. They're speaking from, they're taking a point of view here, but I take it from talking to them, they're not necessarily trying to talk you into anything. They're a little more, shall we say, non-committed than the folks on the extreme ends. Is that fair to say? No? Okay, Ms. Willis, I won't characterize you then. You go ahead and explain it when you get the mic. If it's okay, I'm going to, unless you guys want to introduce yourselves and talk about what your positions are, I'll just go ahead and begin with the questions. As I say, they're fairly straightforward questions. I don't think there's nothing here to sandbag anybody, I think. I would hope we'll have one answer from this half of the table and one answer from this half of the table, rather than treating it as though you were candidates for the Republican nomination for president, for instance, and having to hear everybody. First question that crops up, fairly simple. How will the move to a metro system benefit the citizens of Murray County or act against their interest? Which way will it be, and how will that happen? Mr. Hardison, you want to take it?
Before I start answering any questions, I want to thank the two gentlemen that are to my left and the other members of the Metro Charter Commission. I appreciate so much the work that they did. I was told many times in trying to get my appointments, my 10 that I had to appoint, and because I was very honest with them, it did take a lot of hard work, a lot of hours away from their family, and I appreciate it. That doesn't mean that I agree with the charter, and I especially don't agree with the Principal Metro in the charter. I don't think, and I've read and reread in the charter, I've studied the Tennessee Code that sets it up. There's a lot of fault in Tennessee Code. There's too much of a timetable that pushes these ladies and gentlemen on the Charter Commission to get work done in a certain time frame. I don't think that it gives adequate time for anyone to really study it the way they do. Now, these ladies and gentlemen met many, many times, but the public was never afforded the opportunity. No fault of theirs. They had some public forums that were not well attended. But in my opinion, as county mayor and 29 years of elected public service, I do not see anything, any advantage to metropolitan government in Murray County. We are blessed in Murray County to have a great relationship with our three sister cities. We have a consolidated school system already. We have great partnerships that we do in our library, our emergency management, our solid waste. It just goes on, and we've been able to partner up across the county on those things. The only two things that I have been able to find in the charter through my study is that we can't do outside of this charter is, number one, we can't dissolve the City of Columbia's charter. Now, personally, I have no desire to do that. I think the City of Columbia has done an excellent job. They have 7 council people, including the mayor and vice mayor. I think they serve a very wonderful purpose. In fact, that the City of Columbia has some specialized services that we don't have in the county. We don't have sewer, we don't have the stormwater problem and so forth. And looking at that, I just think that it's going to be a very difficult job for 11 people to manage the big animal that would be created. I want to say this too, and something that I think has been overlooked by most people. On your Columbia City Council, you have 2 minority representatives on there. You're going to lose those folks, and this gentleman and lady have worked very hard for the citizens of the City of Columbia and for Murray County. You're also going to lose one of your minority representatives on the council. You're going from 4 down to 1. To me, that's a wrong step. That's the wrong thing to do, because the minorities have a lot of problems, special problems they need attention on, and I just really think there needs to be more minority representation. Second thing, the only other thing that this charter won't allow us to do, and I'm going to talk a little faster than I ordinarily do, we will not be able to prohibit county employees from serving on the commission. Now, Mr. Hassey Glenn Hassey, who was one of my very dear friends. I served as a pallbearer in his funeral. And I spent more time with Mr. Hassey than I did all the other 21 commissioners for that 4-year period. He was a very passionate man. He was a man of passion and dedication. He was very upset by the fact that commissioners could read a statement and still vote. We passed an act in 2007, took it to state legislature, took it back up there in 08, and each time the County Commissioner Association refused to bring it out of their association and give it any support. So that's why we don't have that. We will not be able to do that, but the answer is still outside the charter. If you don't think that a person should be on Maury County Commission or whatever, you just simply don't vote for them. It's that simple. And somebody said, you know, I'm looked at every 4 years. If you don't think that I'm the one that should do it, then just don't vote for me. You don't think I'm a county employee. So that's my position on it.
Do you want to chip in, Ms. Willis, or shall we go to the other side of the table here? That's a pretty broad question.
Actually, I certainly don't have the experience that Mayor Bailey does as far as being in the government. I've only been here, this is my first term as a county commissioner, and I'll have to say I certainly have learned quite a bit along the way, and when I got asked to be on this, as far as reading the charter and things that I do, I again agree that I think that we are doing a great job the way that we're running our government and the way we're running our county and city right now. I don't understand, I don't have where the benefits for the citizens would be. Now, don't get me wrong, I think there's always room for some improvements in our current system, the way we're governing our county, but there's nothing that our county commission cannot do to make changes to better things. So, you know, I'm not for the metro government. I don't, my constituents are not from the metro government, and I think their biggest concern that most of the people that live in my district live in the county. So we don't have any services anyway. And there's nothing in this charter that's going to guarantee they're going to have any services. You know, there's still the urban area. They're still going to have their trash pickup, their fire protection. You know, we do that through volunteer services in the county. I have people in my county who don't even have water. You know, is there any, you know, they think this is going to be more efficient, or, you know, it's not going to raise your taxes, but I have people wanting to use their tax money just for water. So I don't have a reason to know that there's enough benefits for us to support a metro government.
Gentlemen.
You know, Mayor Bailey, thank you for your compliments. I did want to take a moment to say that this group of 15 that I served with, and I've been on many groups during my 30 years practicing law in Columbia, I can't ever remember a harder working, more conscientious, responsible group of people, and I respect them all very, very much. And I'm very proud of what we accomplished. It is unfortunate that Mr. Hassey didn't get to see it to the end, because he almost singularly was responsible for bringing this issue to the table for us to discuss. And I think it's been a wonderful opportunity for us in Maury County to look at ourselves, to look at our governments, to look at what we've done, maybe we haven't done, and that regardless of the outcome, we ought to continue to be no longer after March the 6th anti this or pro this. I hope that when the smoke clears, we are all pro Columbia and pro Maury County, because I still happen to believe that it's absolutely one of the best places to live, and I think it will be, work and raise a family. And I don't think staying with our current system of city and county government will necessarily change that for the worse. I don't think that Metro will necessarily do all of the bad things that people have said. I truly hope some of the same people, like Commissioner Willis, who I've known for a long time and I respect. I would hope that she would be, and that many of the council people and many of the same commissioners would be involved in the metropolitan government. It will be no better than the people we elect to it. Any of its accomplishments will be based on how dedicated and conscientious those people are, and we need some of the same people who have served us so well involved in the metropolitan government, should it go that way. Just taking a broad view for a moment on the benefits of metropolitan government and how it may apply here, I turn to the Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations, who have studied our local governments since the mid-70s, has studied metropolitan, its implications, the weaknesses of our existing governments, the strengths. Same thing with metropolitan governments. And it boils down to 6 things. 1, you have an economic development edge because you have a singular source to turn to when new companies are coming to town. Does this necessarily have to be done through metropolitan? No. Hamilton County right now is doing that together with Chattanooga and Collegedale, with some of their others, and it's very effective. When I go to conferences and I see the combined forces from Coffee County and Manchester and other places, it's that singular effort that gives you an economic edge in the marketplace, and if we want to be competitive, we're going to have to do that. And that's I did a lot of study on Richmond County, Augusta, Georgia. That's one of the main reasons they went metropolitans, because they felt like together with a singular source they would have an economic edge. They went metropolitan, and in the last 5 years they have created 10,000 new jobs. Was it all metropolitan government? No, but it had a lot to do with it. You have the obvious efficiencies, economies of scale, because you combine purchasing power, equipment, buildings. Instead of the city having all of this property and the county having all of this property, maybe if we put some of that together, we wouldn't have to build a $25 to $30 million Justice Center. Maybe we could find a way to get Sheriff George his new building. And while we could do some of that on a cooperative effort, we haven't. Very quickly, the others that are normally given: less duplication, more transparency, more harmony through cooperation, and accountability. And I'm sure we'll have some more questions.
Thank you. We kind of ran on that one, and I think that's a good thing, because we're getting used to how you speak, how you address these questions, and so forth. I would hope we would try to keep our answers from here on out within say a 3-minute period. We didn't talk about that beforehand, but if that's all right with everybody, keep you from having to repeat yourself, among other things.
We're just getting started.
Second question, and I think this one naturally goes to the near side of the table. What was the original motivation, and what were the intended goals of considering a metro system?
Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. Want to again thank Mayor Bailey and Mayor Dickey. When we were appointed as a charter commission, I guess I'm a little young and maybe naive and wanting to see the best interests of our community. I said yes. Many people, I think, out there want our community to be a better place and want to see it excel and really live up to its potential. And I do believe that Glenn Hassey, when he started out, Glenn, many of you don't know, was my commissioner. And one Saturday morning, he knocked on my door and said he was running for county commission. And when he did that, we had some other conversations a little later on, and Glenn was very passionate. But the reason we are here is because there was an effort to gain signatures, 10% of those persons who had voted in the gubernatorial election. 3,300 people signed a petition. I went by the election commission and picked up a copy of the original petition just because I wanted to read over it again. And when Glenn basically said we want to look at what we're doing, how the government is working, I don't believe, I didn't hear Glenn say anything about the government being bad for Maury County or the city of Columbia, but he did say, hey, let's look at another alternative form of government. And under TCA 7-101, we had a charter commission appointed by the Mayor Bailey and Mayor Dickey to form a charter. And Mayor Bailey is exactly right. 9 months is not adequate time to know everything, nor should, in my opinion, an appointed body be the ones to make some of the major decisions that should be left to those persons who are elected. You got to give them some latitude. So in a nutshell, it was an opportunity to look at an alternative form of government. If you were interested in local government reform, our state law allows for that, and that's the reason we were appointed, and ultimately this charter was developed.
My understanding is the one and only original motivation for the Metro government, for them to have this petition, was that Mr. Glenn Hasey was the one who originated that. And I think his real motivation was that he wanted to change the current form of government, basically because he did not want county employees on the commission. That was just one of his biggest issues that he had. I'm like Mayor Bailey, you know, the law, I mean, the way it is, county employees can be, you know, serve on the county commission, they can vote. That is the Tennessee Association doesn't support us not doing that. They are all for county employees serving on the county commission. So, you know, there again, and I guess, do we just now have 2 commissioners that are county employees? That, yeah, and then, you know, I'm like you. If people are totally against county employees serving on the commission, then they shouldn't be voting for that person. I mean, the public voted us in, and the public voted those knowing that those people were county employees.
Clarification, you said the Tennessee Association, that's the Tennessee Association of County Officials? Tennessee Association of what?
As I said earlier, Mr. Hasey was a man of passion and a man who really went after what he did. And I say all that in complimenting Mr. Hasey, certainly not critical. But he was so upset about the fact that county commissioners could be the county employees also. Following certain rules, they had to be a county commissioner at the time they were elected, not after they were elected. But we went that, and we passed that resolution. We took it to the state. The state had no interest in it, and that was pretty much the end of it. And that for 2 consecutive years we did that. Mr. Hasey told me himself, he said, I'm not giving up on this, and he never gave up on anything. And he worked and he worked. He said, I'm going to do a charter commission. I'm going to do this, and we're going to write that. The city of Columbia, as they are today, and other cities, they have to follow state laws, but they also have the ability to write a charter. And in their charter, they prohibit their city employees from serving on them. That's where the whole idea comes from of the charter of government. You can do things that the Tennessee County law won't let us do, the consolidated laws of the state of Tennessee. I know that's why he did it. I know that other things were put into it. I'm not critical of the other things that put into it. But as I mentioned earlier, that I can't see but 2 things that really can be accomplished by putting this charter commission in, the two items that I mentioned. We have great partnerships, and I just continue to think of them as things that we have done together with the cities, 3 and 4 cities. We've saved the citizens of Maury County and Columbia $1 million a year for the last 6 or 7 years because we went together and did our solid waste. There's no mechanism to stop us from doing many, many wonderful things in this charter, great ideas that we can do. And I'll address one of those when we get on the mayor's thing. But the door is open, and I appreciate what the suggestions that have been made, and I hope that the Maury County Commission will step up to the plate, and even the city of Columbia, and we can do some more things together and save the taxpayers more money and give better service.
To clarify, if a person is already a county employee, he can be elected to the commission, but a person who's elected to the commission may not then be hired by the county. Is that correct?
Well, what the deal is, if we have a person who runs for office, they are not a county employee. They become a county employee. A job comes open. It's a job they do. Something as simple as a part-time employee at a convenience center. They are no longer entitled to vote on anything to do with those particular budgets. You have to be a county employee at the time of the election. If it occurs later, you're out of luck. And we had that happen to a gentleman. He sat there for the rest of a year and wasn't able to vote on a lot of the budgets.
All righty. Technical question, I think. Why is this being voted on in the March 6th Republican presidential primary instead of during the November 11th general election? Timetable question?
We really had no choice. Because of when the petition was committed or submitted, the petition was submitted. Before the petition was submitted and certified, the clock starts running on the mayors to appoint the 15 members of the Charter Commission. Once we took our seats, then the clock started running on us, 9 months, to complete the charter. Then once we turned it in, all by statute, under Title 7, once we turned it in, then the clock starts running on the Election Commission. You have 100 days to schedule the vote. And we actually got one little extension so that we could put this on the next big election that was coming up, so that we didn't spend the money that we would have spent on an election by itself.
So
we're not permitted by law to get all the way to November.
It's just a timetable issue that's dictated by the state law under which this happens. Okay.
Yes.
Next question. The number of commissioners is to be cut in half from 22 to 11. The question is, what effect will this have on the voice of the people being heard? My calculator tells me you'll still have only 7,300 people per commissioner, population per commissioner. Is that a problem, yes or no?
I think there's two very different views, even among our commissioners, about whether this is a good thing or bad thing. But back to the charter again. Maury County Commission has the ability to cut that number in half at our very next meeting in March by a simple majority. 12 votes can take that thing down. In the 2014 election, you can have 11 commissioners. All you have to do is to notify the Election Commission early that you're going to do that before that. But you can take that thing down without going through a charter revision to do it. Is it good or is it bad? I've heard both sides. I heard that it knocks out representation for the people, and the county grew 16.5% from 2010 to 2010. We grew 7.7% in the 3 bad years, 07, 08, and 09. Our county is going to continue to grow because of our proximity to Nashville. And we're going to continue to have more and more people. We're going to 80,956, and we have more people than that here, but that's what the census said. So on one side, you have people saying you need to have more people available to take care of situations. On the other side, it says that you can operate better with 11, and both of those have great merits to them. I can't argue with either one of those things, but it can be done without metropolitan government if that's what the will of the people of Maury County is. Just simply talk to your commissioners. It all comes back to that.
Gentlemen?
Yes, I'll say that.
More efficient? What?
Well, that was one of the things that came out of drawing the districts, and I was serving on a committee, was looking at the number. And it was arguments on both sides for efficiency and whether or not 11 people could truly represent their constituents. But I think it goes back to how well you establish that communication and have accountability. Because you may have a certain number doesn't necessarily mean that the elected officials are being accountable to the people. And I think that's what is important, whether it's 11, whether it's 22. And again, how the government is able to function, how it is able to achieve the success is going to be based on the leadership of those 11 or 22, however many it is, that are representing and administering the government.
I did want to say that, and there were a number of people who attended a lot of our meetings, Commissioner Vick and Beckham, and I think they probably witnessed that we considered everything from 3 to 40. We consulted with state officials, population experts, reapportionment, and finally, somewhat of a compromise, we came to the conclusion that right now, based on population, electoral decision-making, Murray County is divided into 11 districts. And we came up with the rationale behind having 11, 22 in the county, 7 in the city, now 11 in this metropolitan, 1 per district, which has been designed to serve the population of Murray County. As Mayor Bailey said, we're probably about to go to a 12th and a 13th. Metropolitan government will increase accordingly. If we go to a 12th or a 13th district, then we'd have 13. But a whole lot of effort, research went into what was the right number, and there are arguments on both sides, and none is perfect. I do want to say though that, and I disagree with Mayor Bailey on this point, because we came very close to reducing the number, and when we didn't, I think it sort of proved to me that I just don't think that we ever will within the confines of county government, because the people voting to reduce that number are the people that are most affected by it. And I think it's difficult to ask them to make that decision. Now, that's just one aspect of the entire picture of metropolitan government, and hopefully we'll get to give the rest of the picture, but there's a lot of debate on that one.
Speaking of population and looking over some charts, getting ready for tonight, I noticed that Murray County is expected to have 109,000 people by 2025 and grow to almost 150,000 by the year 2040. So I suppose that no matter what form of government you wind up under, you're in for a lot of planning, having to deliver a lot more services. Yeah. Services to a lot more people.
I think we would have hit that 90,000 in 2010 if we hadn't had the bad years, because coming right down that growth corridor, 65 to 31, and Spring Hill booming up there, I think we would have hit that. But we took a little setback.
Price of gasoline too. Question: efficiency. I'm going to ask 2 questions at once here, because I think it's the same question from 2 different angles, and you may want to answer different parts of it. You'll see what I mean here. Efficiency. One question: can you lay out the argument for why this arrangement will be more efficient? Second part of that question: if it is indeed more efficient, does that mean less services or lower quality services? I think that's part of the same question. If you disagree, yell at me. I'm here for you. Can you lay out the proposal that it will be more efficient?
I don't have an argument that says it will be more efficient. I think it's going to take quite a number of years and quite a bit of money for these 2 bodies to ever merge and be efficient in that. First of all, the computer software is not the same, so therefore that's got to be merged. Not only that, it's also said that all these people that work for the county, work for the city, are going to be able to keep their retirement. So you still have to administer both of those for however long. I mean, 40 years from now, until you ever get everybody off of their retirement and benefit plan. So it just takes a whole lot more money than I think people realize for us to be able to ever get to that point where we consolidate our county and city government to be more efficient.
I agree with Kim that it will not be easy. There's a lot of logistical difficulties, and that's one of the reasons only 3 out of our 95 counties have undertaken this. It's tough. I just happen to believe that just because it's difficult doesn't mean we shouldn't try to do it if the positives outweigh the negatives. You know, you have one government instead of 2. You have one mayor instead of 2. You have one legislative body instead of 2. You have one law enforcement agency instead of 2. You have one finance department, one codes department, one dispatch, one 911, one public works. You have to be able to make that more efficient by consolidating all of their purchasing power, consolidating all of the assets for mixed use of what use would have previously been the city and the county. Will it take some time to achieve that? Will there not be problems with software? Of course, but it's an achievable goal, and I think it's one that we should always in government look at, which is greater efficiency.
You know,
Sir.
I would say that if 2 cities are going to merge and consolidate, like has happened part of this number 45 in the United States, that's a much more doable thing. The county and city governments are as different as daylight and dark. The city has issues that the county commissioners have no clue about, including myself. They have specialized issues. They're under the drainage laws. They have to go storm sewer drainings. They have to do the sewer in itself is an entirely different program than what we have had to do on the county side. I just think it takes a specialization to, when you're running a city of 35,000, which Columbia is, I think they have to have people in there who are really doing that particular thing and are interested in those problems that we don't have out of the county. And, you know, and as Kim was saying, we're going to have 3 insurances, 3 pension plans, 3 wage scales. That is difficult at best that we could do that thing and keep it off and keep our employees from being at each other's neck about what your benefits are getting and doing the same job. It's unfortunate that occurs, but we're going to have some unbelievable accounting measures to keep up when we start dissecting this, so this thing pass. It's not going to be simple. It cannot be done in the time frame that's set up to get it done. It cannot happen in that time frame and be done efficiently. It's going to be an ongoing process for years, in my opinion.
Let me take a question sort of out of order here and jump it up closer to the top here, because I think this is the time to take it up. Metro Nashville is not the only metropolitan government in Tennessee. There's also metropolitan governments in Moore County, Lynchburg, and in Trousdale/Hartsville. Has anybody looked at those smaller merger type situations? Is there anything to be learned from that? You, sir, have talked about the complication of merging 2 systems. Is that a function of the size of Murray County?
Well, Sheriff George and I visited Trousdale County about 2003, 2004, I guess, when this little talk about Metro started up. We met with the county mayor. We met with the sheriff, who was in charge of all the law enforcement. I talked with their county mayor about 2 weeks ago. He said very little had been gained by that, and they were still having trouble getting things adjusted, and they've been on it now, I think, since 2001, I believe. I don't
Yes, sir, 2001.
It's somewhere around the early 2000s, and they're still on there. There's 7,500 people. They have 1 city, 1 county. We've got 3 cities, 1 who can't be part of it, 1 that's chosen not to be part of it, and then the principal city, being the largest city, we're trying to mesh them in together. They have an entirely different situation, and there are situations that I would agree would be ideal candidates for mergers.
Gentlemen, have you looked at those particular?
Yes, we did look at those situations. We did look at their charters. We were going to try to go on some fact-finding missions to those different counties, but that didn't work out. We were limited on time. But I will say, as far as when we get kind of twofold, going back to the efficient side. Efficient doesn't necessarily mean deficient, because if it is, again, operated properly, managed properly, it can be efficient and it can work. Of course, it has to be operated and ran, from a standpoint like a business. But let me also say, when you go to look at the smaller mergers that have taken place, it's really not a comparison. It's really not. You have a large merger in Nashville and Davidson County, and then the smaller ones. But if you look at it, I think right now, if we're looking at our regional economy, I think Metro Davidson County is driving really a lot of the prosperity for the entire region. And of course, they have, over their 50 years have figured out a way to make it work. So my statement is, I think when we get to efficient, you can look at what we currently have and look at ways to make it more efficient using technology. And also, I think we need to be thinking about how is it more efficient for the citizens and the taxpayers. We need to figure out ways that that can be achieved. And when we were making decisions, that was one of the things I was looking at. A lot of people, even on this issue, have misinformation or no information at all, because how are we engaging with our particular citizens? And we've all admitted that even with the city and the county, it is kind of complicated to understand how it all works. So I think we need to be looking for ways that we can make it efficient for our citizens and taxpayers to get information, to understand services, and to better communicate and interact with the government.
I believe it, I'm not misstating it, you two gentlemen over on this near side here believe that a metropolitan form of government will aid in economic growth and development. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
That's
yes.
And on this side, I think what you're trying to get across to us is that you've got growth that you're facing, and that's going to require planning, I take it, and real work to accommodate. How would that be accomplished then?
Well, here again, on our side that we are now, Murray Alliance is a partnership, a very unique partnership that started in the year 2000. Murray County government contributes $175,000 a year to that. The City of Columbia contributes $100,000. We now have involved the private sector into that and have raised over $2 million. Murray Alliance is a true partnership between the two governments and the private sector, and they are doing wonderful things. We have recruited, we can account for 994 jobs that we got last year in Murray County, and we're not as close to the interstate as some of our friends are in Murfreesboro and Franklin and so forth, and we don't have some of the amenities they'd have. I think we recognize our shortfall. We have a wonderful organization that's already there that doesn't need to be taken over by the government. It needs to be where it is. It's working. It's a partnership. It's outside Metro. We have it today.
Is it where you want it to be, or do you see that it could be improved?
Everything can be improved. Somebody asked me occasionally, how are you getting along? I said, well, there's always room for improvement, and that's the way it always is. And as long as you have that attitude that there's room for improvement, I think you'll survive, and not only survive, you'll prosper.
I think one of the basic questions we've been handed to deal with, how would taxes be affected by the incoming Metro government if it passes? Go ahead, flip. Heads or tails?
Go ahead, Kim.
That's okay. I don't think there is a real answer to that. I don't think anybody knows how taxes are going to be affected by Metro government. I just know that the majority of the citizens that live here in Murray County, nobody wants their taxes raised, and I don't think it would. It's certainly not the mission of the current county commission, and I'm sure it wouldn't be of the Metro government. The whole deal is, I think there we're going to look for ways to operate efficiently enough to provide the same or better services that we all have now and not raise people's taxes. But like I said, again, there are so many unanswered questions about how this merger might happen and then what you can do after that, there's not a real answer to what's going to happen to the taxes. You know, there again, that depends on economic growth. It depends on the revenues. It depends on sales tax. You know, those are all projected year by year by year. And you know, if we have a bad year, then you know, it really affects. You know, we do our best to hold our tax rate the way it is, and we are one of the lowest tax rate counties in Tennessee.
Gentlemen.
You know, it's another good question we get asked all the time, and nobody really knows what the answer is. You know, from my standpoint, I think the worst case scenario under a metropolitan government is that we form a metropolitan government, but take too many years trying to consolidate, not doing anything different, same services, and we end up with same services and the exact same taxes that we're paying now, just with a different name on it. I would like to think that through consolidation, particularly in our physical resources such as real property and buildings, where we have some huge needs coming at us over the next few years, that we could save an enormous amount of money just by consolidating those buildings for the Justice Center and the Law Enforcement Center in a way that would allow us to maintain services, expand services. But I think, again, I've looked at it and looked at it. I still think the worst thing is that we just really don't take advantage of any of it. We don't do anything. And we got a new name on the door and a new name on the tax, but otherwise everything's the same.
Question that occurred to me as I was reading over the charter. The Urban Services District under this charter will have a separate higher tax rate to pay for the urban type services. How would that be raised or lowered? Who would vote on that?
Let me take that one.
Urban Council.
Yeah. The Urban Council's an odd creature that was in the original statutes passed after we amended the Constitution in '53. I mean, the urban area tax is basically the city tax. Covers services like police, fire, that garbage pickup that you don't necessarily have spread out through the county. The general services area, which is the county, you know, and that's basically the general service area tax, county tax. Urban services area is the city tax. But by law, and it's in the charter because it is required to be in the charter, you have to create an urban council. Which consists, well, at least the way we designed it, it consists of 3 of the Metropolitan Council people that are from the city of Columbia. And coincidentally, one of the things we studied in looking at that 11 is that our predictions were that you'd basically either have 6 of those 11 from the county and 5 from the city, or vice versa, which is what we wanted to keep it equal and adequate representation. But that urban council, it passes the city tax that the Metropolitan Council has. When they pass their budget, then you derive the tax necessary to fund that budget. The urban council has to vote on it. It's mandatory.
But the urban council does not consist of all of the representatives of the urban districts. Is that right?
Yeah, but it's meaningless. They have to pass it. I don't know why we still have it in the statute, because they have no discretion. They can't not pass it. They have to do what the Metropolitan Council tells them.
So what you're telling me is that the Metropolitan Council effectively,
oh, absolutely,
in setting the budget, they also set the urban district tax.
Absolutely. The statute says you must have an urban council. The statute also says the urban council has to do exactly what the Metropolitan Council tells them to.
I believe you. That's scary. I believe you. Yes.
Well, I don't know why you have it. It yes. serves no purpose.
Yes.
It may have originally, but it should be out of the statute.
Mr. Mayor.
That's another thing I have a great problem with. You're going to have 11 people on there. You're going to have, by law, as Randy says, you're going to have the top 3 vote getters in the city or the urban services. That's who's going to be your urban council. Those ladies or gentlemen are going to set the tax rate based on the budget that is being provided. You're going to set the general services tax rate first. But what I don't understand, if we're going to be together and we're going to be united and we're going to be one, why do 3 people out of 11 set that tax rate for the urban services district when the guys on the urban are going to do the general rate too? Why can't they all share it? Are they not going to be equal? I mean, I know it's the law. It's a flaw in the law as far as I'm concerned. The whole Metro law is flawed and needs to be looked at.
Well, I think I know the answer to your second question. The people who are in the urban services district are also in the general services district. They pay the general services tax also. Mm-hmm. That's the way it is in Nashville Metro. I think it's the same way under your chart.
The council, forget the urban council for a minute because it's meaningless. The Metropolitan Council, if you go that way, makes the decision.
I think I understand both your points, and I'm glad I don't have to vote. As I understand it, you already have a consolidated public school system. There's no separate city school system. Is there anything that we're not thinking about that will have an effect if the Metro system goes into effect? Will it have any effect on the school system?
We had an education committee that did look at that issue of education very heavily. Of course, based on legal consultation, it became very evident that the Education Committee and its recommendations couldn't dictate through the charter specific things that needed to occur. There were certain guidelines they had to follow. But I think all of us know we want to have an outstanding education system, which definitely correlates to economic development. And I think that supporting that in whatever by whatever means necessary to continue to educate our kids is something as we looked at in the charter is how can we best do that. Of course, as I said, outside of making sure we have the set number of school board representatives, which is again consistent with the 11 districts that we have, and making sure that it's accredited. That's one of the things that was debated a little bit about whether or not it should be accredited. Really, that was one area that we really didn't mess with too much because we already have a one school system in the American County school system.
I believe in most places in Tennessee, in fact, I believe in all places in Tennessee, the school board projects the budget they'd like to have, turn it over to the local county commission or Metro Council, and those are the people who vote on it. The elected officials vote on it rather than the school board. That wouldn't be any different no matter which way this vote goes, right? Okay. A question here, if all 4 government entities are opposed to the Metropolitan Charter, who is advocating consolidation?
Raise your hand. Who's advocating?
One thing I would say is that I think the reason we're here is because 3,300 people signed a petition to have the Charter Commission established, and our job was to create the charter. I made it very clear from the beginning. I entered into it with an open mind, not one way or the other. And also, I made it very clear that at the end of the day, I don't want to be the one out advocating for or against the charter. I think you have to look at both sides, pros and cons, as anybody would do, to make up your mind to say either I'm going to be for it or against it. As far as who necessarily is advocating it, I think the process that we followed made sure it was on the ballot as a referendum to be voted on by the people, and I think ultimately the people, the voters, will decide. And we got to remember, that's the state law. 3,300 people sign a petition. It could be done, if it fails, 3 years from now. It could be done again. That's what the state law currently allows, and I think we have to remember the democratic democracy that we have in the process that we are a part of.
As I say, getting ready for this, I looked up the latest audit report on both the city and the county. The county in its 2010 audit had about 10 findings. There were members of the executive branch who were taking extra money from citizens in addition to the appropriate fees. I believe that's been addressed. several departments had safeguard software that they weren't even bothering. They're supposed to maintain the integrity of their files and keep people out of them, and they weren't even monitoring them. The sheriff's office didn't bother to produce a financial statement. Will the consolidation make departments more accountable on a year-to-year basis, or is that something that is a problem no matter what type of government you have?
If you read the Metro Charter, they are proposing to put in an audit department. We are very blessed to have a great state audit department now. They work with us, and if you look at an audit, they're there to help you. They actually house with us in their state cutbacks. They've been with us for the last 3 years, so they don't do as much traveling. We're able to ask them a lot of questions proactively on the front end and get their advice. You know, I don't really see, if we're going to try to save some money, why we need to develop an audit department. And I look at the qualifications set forth in the charter for the auditor. He or she has to have a CPA when the director of the finance only has to have a bachelor's in business or finance or accounting. To me, there's a great deal of emphasis and a great deal of possible waste of taxpayers' money when we have a great audit right now with the state. They're very meticulous, and they're getting into a lot of things. They're getting all the time better with what they're doing. When I first came on in 2002, the audit was pretty much just an audit. It went through the motions, but you know, as it's gotten more precise, they're actually able to point out a thing. Now, some of the things are still very meticulous, and I could go through two or three of them real quick, but I'm not going to do that because they do it the same thing every year because they get onto something. But our commission voted just last year. They wanted us to spend $70,000 to $80,000 of taxpayer money to improve a situation which is better, I'll say, than probably all of the counties in the state of Tennessee in the planning and zoning. So, you know, we just bear with them, we work with them, and I don't see any need for creating an audit department.
You know, and again, Mayor, that's an issue that I know you all have discussed at the county commission level for a couple of years. And the state audit is wonderful, but it's once a year. Our thinking on this was that if we change our government, if we're truly trying to improve what we're doing, then why once a year? Why not have a Department of Internal Audit 365 days a year to try to make sure that we achieve the efficiencies that are inherent in a consolidated government, and not just on accounting, but on issues of proper use, economies of scale, and that type of thing. It just takes the state audit to another level, was our thinking.
And I agree with Randy on that. I'm not against an audit. I think that Maury County needs to step up and do the recommendation that they go into all the 92 counties that aren't metro, that we do an audit committee. Not necessarily an audit department, but an audit committee would be good for all the counties, and not necessarily a formal where you've got to go and spend. I can imagine hiring a CPA with any worth what he's going to pay for. It's going to be $75,000 to $100,000 a year around here, and I may be grossly low on that. Those folks have to have a very.
Mayor, I do want to correct you, Mayor, if you don't mind for a minute. That
okay.
I was going back to the charter itself. The director of the internal audit must be either a certified public accountant or a certified internal auditor, which is a different designation.
Yeah, that's a fraud. I mean, they have special things.
Yeah, or have equivalent education and experience satisfactory to the mayor of the council. So we try to put some leeway in some of those department heads and not necessarily require. And we had a lot of debate about this. Should they be college degree? And a lot of us thought, well, you know, somebody with an equivalent amount of experience is just as good as somebody with a college degree. And some of the department heads, not necessarily all.
Absolutely.
But and John Johnson, who was on the 15, had actually been an internal auditor, and I didn't realize there was about 5 different certifications for people that study efficiency. And so that's what we were trying to find, someone like that. that wasn't my subcommittee, so I had to search for that for a minute.
I will say that that idea came from Murray Regional Medical Center that has a department, and some of our commission members informed us of how they had used that department to help them to identify particular areas that may need corrections or deficiencies prior to the audit coming in, making sure that things were done consistent with policy. So that's something that's already being done. We're kind of looking at a real world model, and we incorporated it within the charter because we thought that was a good recommendation.
Governments that I know that have departments of internal audit seem to think that it gives them.
Can't hear you.
Hello? Hello? Are we here? Battery. Okay,
There
we're
you
back. The governments that I'm familiar with that have a Department of Internal Audit seem to think that it does give them another tool. I don't have a real good sense of whether they're right or wrong. Mr. Mayor, I believe that the last two county audits have suggested that the county commission form an audit committee. And you're saying that that is a good idea?
Yeah, I think it is, and it's something that's going to continue to be, as we talk, Commissioner, the Comptroller, Justin Wilson, is going to push for this, and it's going to get more complex, and a lot of it's really, really good, and we don't fight the audit. We welcome our auditors into Murray County because they do help us, and we want to comply with all the laws.
Well, just so that people will remember what we said about auditors, I should repeat something that the former comptroller, John Morgan, used to say. The auditor is the guy who comes on the battlefield after the battle and bayonets the wounded. So.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
This is interesting, and I don't have a whole lot of experience in all of this, but I do serve on the budget committee of the county commission, which our county budget director reports to and answers to the budget committee. Yes, I think there can be improvements in that situation. I also serve on the advisory board of the financial group of the Murray Regional Hospital. And so watching what Murray Regional does with their finances and their reportings and what we do, it really is different. And I do think that there are improvements that can be made in our finance department with the county.
Question from the audience here, noting that the special services district are in effect separate taxing districts. So the question arises, if there was some sort of catastrophic event in one of the special services districts, I don't know what that might be, a flood, a fire that destroys infrastructure. If it were, for instance, in Santa Fe, would the people in Santa Fe, how do we say it down here? Would they have to absorb all of that on their own, or would that something that's dealt with by the metropolitan government as a whole?
Take it, no. A metropolitan government, including our charter commission, has the right to create special services districts. If the Metropolitan Council decides not to, then they don't. And the only reason they would ever establish one would be at the request of people in a particular area. Excuse me. You know, if the people in Santa Fe or Culleoka or any of the other county decided they wanted garbage pickup or sewer, you can do that with the metropolitan government. If the people want it, if they vote for it, and if they agree to pay for it. Now, that's not to say if there was a catastrophe that the Metropolitan Council can't make a decision that it should assist that community as a whole and not saddle it with all the cost. That's a one-time type of expenditure. That's not really a special, you wouldn't create a special services district for that. Special services district is something that you create because somebody wants special services.
Garbage pickup, city water.
Yeah. And if they don't, then you have no special services districts.
Okay. Question arises here about election procedures and election commission and so forth. I believe those are addressed in the Metro Council charter, the Metro City Charter in Nashville. They do address how an election commission will work. I believe y'all have just simply said we adopt the same election commission that is set up by the state.
Right.
Are there reasons for not involving that in the Metro Charter?
We did. There was no. Again, that's just one of the reasons why we're so different from Metro, and it has so many of its own unique needs with 40+ members and a city that consumes most of the county. We didn't see any reason why, in that case, we should veer from how we have been voting and what the people are accustomed to.
All righty. I'm going to hold this one for a minute.
Must have been a doozy.
Tell me something just as a matter of fact, and I suspect that our two county officials will know more about this. Each county in the state, each city in the state, we're supposed to come up with a plan under a public chapter called 1101 that says, okay, here's where the city is going to expand. Here's where we intend to annex during the next, 20 years? And so you have to lay it out well in advance. I was not able to find any evidence that there was a lot of fighting in Murray County over that. I was told it was not terribly contentious. Have I been told wrong?
Well,
how did it work out?
Once. We have the ability to call that commission to order. We've only done it once since I've been in office. It was a little dispute between Spring Hill and City of Columbia over who was going to get a certain amount of acres and so forth. We were able to settle that very amicably. 1101 law, it took away the saucer effect where you sat down and went 5 miles outside of, say, Mount Pleasant, Columbia, Spring Hill, did your regional planning commissions. It has caused problems probably for some people, but
you're saying overlapping jurisdictions spread out from the three cities.
I guess my biggest issue with that is, and it took me hours and hours to read that in my first or second year because it happened when I was out of government. There wasn't proper documentation done on that particular thing. They were pretty much allowed to, cities were pretty much allowed to do what they thought they would do in 20 years. It's a guess. I mean, just throw a dart at it and go out. It was designed to stop strip annexation, particularly in East Tennessee, where a lot of strip annexation was going. They would actually go down and get 3 or 4 houses, keep 2 or 3, come down and get more. And they tried to do that, and it took a long time to get it done, but
run all the way out to the interstate and get the service station in the city.
Right. Yeah. But that was 1101's main purpose, was to stop that particular thing. We live with it. We haven't had that great a problem with it. Like I say, Columbia solved their problem with Spring Hill over it very amicably.
So annexation concerns are not driving this particular issue, this metropolitan government issue?
Wouldn't think so.
Well, other than being a resident of Spring Hill, I would be remiss to our mayor if I didn't at least address the issue of the southern urban growth area for Spring Hill. And I agree with the mayor. Really, we've had few disputes over annexation between the cities, the 3 cities, other than after Saturn, and the race to Saturn came in, but it was worked out. But the one thing the urban growth areas did encourage, and that was for cities, granted it was a wild guess where the growth was going to be, but the cities did, to some extent, start developing plan of services. Spring Hill has spent a lot of time and money working on growing to the south and to Murray County, which I would really like for them to do, because it's good for the whole county. You know, upgrading their sewer plant, water treatment, so that they can provide services to this area that's not currently in the city, but we hope will be in the city sometime soon. And that's as you, it's been discussed, is an issue, a little bit of a thorny issue as far as metropolitan government is concerned. But I would hope that we'd all agree that Spring Hill ought to be able to continue to grow into their southern urban growth area, because ultimately it's better for the whole county.
But if the Metro Charter passes, then that's an end of annexation for all of the cities.
Unless we can amend the statute and create annexation reserve agreements, which Memphis tried to do, and it's a little questionable.
That's not working out well in Memphis.
Yeah, Memphis has got its own
They're fighting
problem.
it.
Yeah, it's got its whole other issues, but that's where the whole concept of annexation reserve agreements came from, and that's what we should do here. You know, Mount Pleasant should be able to grow if it needs to.
Mr. Mayor, you look interested.
I didn't know that's where you're going with 1101, but that is a big, probably a real controversy about freezing these growth boundaries. Now, Spring Hill has grown unbelievably. They contribute a great amount of tax money to Maury County government, even in the 3 bad years that we've had to slow down the economy. As the law is written and the Attorney General's opinion has come down, you can't change that locally. It has to be changed at the state level. And I'm trying to get a couple of bridges named today, and you know, it's a bureaucracy. They all cooperate, but it is. I mean, it's just to get a bridge named for somebody. Through there, you can imagine something that's going to affect all the other counties in Tennessee. What it's going to do. There's no guarantee that that will ever be lifted, and that is a big issue with the city of particularly Spring Hill and even Mount Pleasant to some degree.
I'm going to wind up here. I'm going to call off a couple of numbers. So make notes if you need to. I was looking at, incidentally, the folks at TASR, the Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations, very interested in what's going on down here. I talked to them this morning, and they're watching carefully, and as always, not taking sides, but watching carefully to see how this pans out. But I asked them about the infrastructure needs of the county that you foresee through the year 2014. An inventory list that government officials have to put together. Apparently, the largest need is going to be $60 million worth of transportation, for which read roads. Second largest needs $30 million in new schools for K through 12, and the third largest water and wastewater at $27 million. I understand that water and wastewater in schools kind of goes back and forth on a year-to-year basis. Those are large to-do list. Mr. Mayor, are you confident that those can be addressed well and efficiently through the current system? And when I get to your side, the question is, tell me how it would be done better, how you'd affect those millions and millions of dollars. We talked about over $100 million. Tell me how that would be done better under Metro.
Well, we were blessed to be close to Nashville again, and Mayor Dickey from Columbia and I have both been fortunate to be included in the 10-county area and doing with transportation. And we have partnered up with Williamson County, our neighbor to the north, and looking at Davidson County, going through and trying to piggyback off whatever they're able to get. We know that we can't have a train coming to Columbia anytime soon down the interstate like Wilson County has. Well, we know that if we partner up with Williamson County, they have a great possibility. If we cut 20 miles off for our people who are working in Nashville, we've done a great thing. Also been fortunate to serve on Duck River Agency Board for government appointments for 2 terms, and we're looking very seriously. We have a great potential for water shortage here. I'm not a preacher of doom, but the only great thing that came out of our drought about 3 years ago was people, the old saying, you don't miss your water till the well runs dry. And when Normandy Lake dropped down there about 40-something feet from the boat ramp, it got a lot of people's attention. So we're looking at these things. We're not what I would call a major player, but we're on the bench trying to get into the game, trying to be in there when things happen and stay a part of it, because we got to do something about our transportation system. We need a better way to get our folks that are going into Nashville and Williamson County. And they're coming both ways. If you look at the license plates today, as I leave people leaving in the afternoon, I see lots of Williamson County plates going back north. So we need a better way to do that. And our fuel, you know, $3.65 a gallon today, if that won't drive you to do something, then you're just not got your head stuck in sand.
Oh, go ahead.
I will say that, yes, those are several what you consider big ticket items. I know in the charter we laid out when the budget is presented. Of course, you have your operations side, then you have your capital needs. And I believe it specifies when you lay out your capital needs before the council, what the recommendations are, and how it is ultimately going to be paid for. I think that's how you have to do it, is strategically. Whether in the current system or our metro system, it has to be laid out strategically, how it's going to be paid for. And I think something else that needs to be taken into account is it needs to be explained to the citizens how important these things are to continue to make our community a vibrant place that improves the quality of life so that we can be competitive to draw jobs and to improve the livability. And I think that's what has to happen. A lot of times people really don't know how much debt we have or why we're going into debt. And if you ask one person what the top needs are, you ask 10 people, you probably get 10 different answers. And you're kind of all over the place. So, you know, if you had a metropolitan government, you would have one body that would ultimately be looking to make those decisions, and hopefully it would be communicated why those expenditures were necessary, and you would be planning ahead instead of being very reactive. I think that's one thing we see with gas prices. You know, everybody's talking about now, what do we do with transportation and the cost of gas going up? But we kind of talk about it until it goes down, and then we find ourselves back in the same positions.
I'm going to say this. We've had some excellent questions come up from the audience. There have been at least 3 questions that came up here that in the course of answering other questions you guys had already jumped on and given us the answers to them. So I think it's I think we've got an excellent audience here that's very thoughtful and have come up with some questions that I suspect both of your sides are going to have to answer more than once in the next 6 to 12 months. I think we've about run out of things to beat you over the head with. I would say one thing to everybody. We talked about the Trousdale-Hartsville merger, which took place in 2001. That consolidation passed by 1 vote. 1. So I would suggest, if you've got a real firm position on this, that you be sure you vote, because you'd hate to not show up at the polls and have it lose by 1 vote. So.
Can we say one closing statement?
Sir, yes, sir, please.
To me, government will be improved in Maury County when we get more interested citizens taking part in our government. Not everybody wants to serve in a position, elected position, but there are people in this very room that I have tried to recruit to run for office, either in Columbia, Maury County, Mount Pleasant, and I've gotten every answer in the world except yes. And until we get people involved in our government who have the government's best interests at heart, we're not going to improve anything regardless of what system we go to. People are the key to improvement of government.
I just want to, thanks for letting me be on this forum that's been very interesting. I did a lot of reading and studying and have myself gotten a lot of answers to the Metro Charter. And interesting enough, this week I have some Spring Hill students who've emailed me, and they're doing that interview, and so they're asking me, why did you run for county commission? But you know, it's part of, it's been a great learning experience, and it's part of something that some friends of mine got me involved in this, and it's really been one of the better experiences that I've had. I have certainly enjoyed serving on the commission, and hopefully before my terms are over that I will have made a difference to help better the government of Maury County.
Mr. Ogilvie.
Thank you. Again, I think it's been a very excellent discussion. I think it's good to get all sides of an issue, to study issues. A lot of issues that we face today are very complex. Yes, it is going to take leadership and accountability. I think that is very clear, and it should be key. And also, I will say, just like with this charter, we now have something that's in printed form that people can see and throw darts at, tear up to shreds. But really, the decisions were made in the committee. And as though at those meetings where we were soliciting public input, and I'm sure subcommittee members talked with elected officials and others about certain decisions and key things that were drafted in this charter. So sometimes it's not about showing up when the vote is going to be taken, but it's making sure your voice is heard during the dialogue of how the legislation is being crafted. And I think that's twofold. It's not just asking citizens to show up, but I think elected officials need to put information out there, make it available. Right now on the phone, I think you can communicate with your legislator through text message, or look up your schools. Now they have an app where you can find a school that's closest to you to see how their scores were, how the achievement was at that particular school. So I think we have to look for ways in which to engage the citizens, and I think ultimately if we do that, then we can improve our government, improve our community, and maybe if we do that together and work together on a lot of those key issues, we'll see a lot of progress that we would desire.
Mr. Hardison.
I'll conclude very briefly. I just hope that whether the majority of us think that we could improve by going metro, or whether the majority thinks we should stay the way they are, that when the votes count and the smoke clears, maybe we've learned a few things that would be beneficial. And not the least of which is, let's all, whichever direction it goes, work together, because this is a great community. We've got great elected leaders. We need more involved. But at the end of the day, let's hopefully learn a few things about some more cooperation that could benefit us, and push forward. This metro has bothered me in that it has sort of fractionalized us. My hope is that regardless of the outcome, we come back together again, and we, as a group, start working toward trying to make us better than ever.
Thank you. I think all of us realize that these four people have come up here today and sat down behind that table and made themselves vulnerable, and I think it's a very brave thing for them to do, and I think we should applaud that. And now, each one of you had something that you would have enjoyed doing more than coming here tonight, and I want to hear you give yourselves a hand for being citizens.
Nobody has said that. Go vote. Nobody has said that. Go vote.
Thank you so much.